Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we begin our second day of a 5-day symposium on creativity rising. If you're going to talk about Humanity Rising, which is the name of this program generally, it has to include the rise of creativity. And it's in that spirit that I want to welcome all of you to our session today. Yesterday, when we began, I brought into focus the growing dangers of possible nuclear war in the conflict in Ukraine, as US and NATO soldiers are now on the ground, integrated into the Ukrainian forces that are in war with the Russians. The Russians are digging in. Tactical nuclear weapons are now confronting each other across the borders in Eastern Europe and now Belarus. So the danger that the world is in is greater than at any time in our lifetime. And we all need to understand that that's the context for whatever we're doing. In the conversation that we had yesterday, one of the panelists, Claire Dubois, mentioned her relationship with Barbara Marx Hubbard and the whole notion of what Barbara called vocational arousal. And I want to bring that in today because I think it is of singular importance as we consider creativity rising, but also what each and every one of us needs to prioritize as the chaos and the turbulence escalates externally. We have a world that is deconstructing at almost every level. And the only way for us to compensate for that is to deepen our inner coherence, our inner self in terms of our equilibrium and our self-love, because you can only love others to the degree that you love yourself. And of particular note is what Barbara Marx Hubbard called vocational arousal, that she experienced in her life, that she was so passionate about what she did and who she was, that those of us who were privileged to know her over the years that she was with us before she died close to age 90, was that each and every day, Barbara was so full of life that she inspired people with possibility and potential and purpose. And as we consider how we ourselves navigate through the thicket of our world, and we consider how we can enable humanity to rise, the clearest and simplest and most effective way to do that, as we've reiterated many times on Humanity Rising, is to embody that ourselves. What is it, as Andrew Harvey used to say, get you up at 3 o'clock in the morning with such power and compulsion that you have no choice but to do it? And you want to do it with all your might and main. That's vocational arousal. Because if we embody that arousal, which Barbara said was ultimately erotic, that we live our lives in a constant manifestation of eros with the noble purpose to enhance humanity's capacity to rise at this critical moment. So it's in that spirit that I want to welcome our two conveners who embody that in their daily lives, as I'm sure most of the rest of the panel does, and many of you seek to do as well. Stephanie Mines, who has convened a number of programs on Humanity Rising and really needs no introduction. other than that she's a neuroscientist and neurobiologist who's written many books on regenerative health, and is in fact, as we'll discuss later on in the program, developing a master's and PhD program at Ubiquity University in partnership with climate and consciousness and the TARA approach to bring regenerative health into a degree program for our Humanity Rising and Ubiquity and TARA and climate consciousness communities. So I want to really acknowledge the vocational arousal of Stephanie Mines and also Kathleen Brigidina, who's a creative artist and has a passion like Stephanie's for how we at this critical moment can empower humanity to take the actions necessary for human renewal. She's been called a creative doula by her community, and also the essence of the trees by the Maori elders with which she's worked. She's an eco-artist, she's a healer, she's a teacher, she's a consultant to organizations, and has empowered many in the course of her activities, like Stephanie has to take seriously the gravity of the crisis that we're in, with the understanding that the deeper the crisis, the greater the opportunity. And that's what we track on Humanity Rising, is the opportunities that are inherent in every crisis, so that when we talk about the crisis, we're only doing so to remind people how big the opportunity is. And there's nobody I know that does that more exuberantly than Stephanie Mines and Kathleen Brigidina. So Kathleen, Stephanie, welcome, and I turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Jim. And welcome everyone to Creativity Rising, the 4th anniversary marking the founding of Climate Change and Consciousness. And I am so thrilled that you brought in Invokes, Barbara Marx Hubbard, who was transitioning, in fact, just as Climate Change and Consciousness was being born. And I do believe, and Kathleen and I have been talking about this because we both feel it, and you can tell by the way I'm lighting up right now, that Barbara Marx Hubbard is here with us. And vocational arousal is indeed what this is all about. So welcome everyone. Today's theme is creativity and systemic change. And if anything arouses my vocational passion and eros, it's that topic. So Kathleen, please bring your voice into this welcome.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to our erotic dream that is unfolding here this week. And Barbara is absolutely present. I have felt it. I think everyone is speaking her name left, right, and center since yesterday. I had the privilege of working very closely with her for 4 years. And she has whispered to me on more than one occasion that she will be broadcasting from the cosmos. She will never stop transmitting. And so this is part of it. It's a reality. It's the reality that we have the power to step into through our creative voice, through our co-creation, sharing with each other and boosting each other to be our fullest, to really bring it, you know, to turn each other on, to allow ourselves to be fully turned on without shying away or backing down. So I'm so excited to be here and for this subject today is really an amazing thing. It actually makes me very verklempt, you know, to think of creativity in the same space as healing, because it is. And that's the power we have. And to just talk more about this, investigate more of it, is really just the most exciting thing that I can think of, and I've been involved in it most of my life. So, and also this Saturday, there'll be a gathering to harvest all of the inspiration and eroticism that you will, I can't stop saying it, well, that you will all be turned on to. And so Friday on Earth Day, I'm leading a gathering where you can all come because you'll be holding all of this, and we want to record it, and we want to move forward with it and put it into action. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Kathleen. I love that you used that phrase, verklempt. So for those who don't speak Yiddish, verklempt is the Yiddish way of saying vocational arousal, or any kind of arousal. Verklempt is you're drenched in arousal. And it's interesting, again, to me that you use that word, because what's been coming to me from my own indigenous wisdom heritage is the word yetzirah, which is a Hebrew word, comes from the Kabbalistic tradition in which my family is steeped. And yetzirah means formation or manifestation, which is what we're talking about today. So today is about the movement from that bounty of inspiration that was downloaded to all of us yesterday into the manifestation. And we are focusing today specifically on healing systems, healthcare systems. How do we create a systemic shift in healthcare? That is the focus of today as a model of systemic change driven by creativity. And I'm going to introduce Dr. Spring Chung, who is on the MA PhD faculty of regenerative health, about to launch on Ubiquity University. And Spring is going to bring us all into a centered place through the indigenous tradition that she embodies. So Dr. Spring Chung, who will also be speaking today, is a source of great inspiration to me. She was involved directly in climate change and consciousness. She is involved directly in my own life, in my own evolution. She is the creatrix of the resonance path and carries a wisdom stream that is utterly unique to her and that shines so brightly, it illuminates the future. Dr. Spring Chung.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Kathleen. It's what an honor to be here to speak about the creativity rising at this extraordinary moment. So I was born in China. My Chinese name is Chun, and I call myself Spring as that's the meaning of my name, Chun. So I will at this time lead everyone or offer everyone to do a very short chant and dancing together. So chanting and dancing is a very ancient form of attuning to the bigger force, bigger life force. The bigger life force that's actually beyond the knowledge of our rational mind, our scientific database, that is beating with our heart every minute, every second, that is coursing through our bloodstream at every moment of our life. So actually, I would invite Stephanie and Kathleen, if you want, you can turn on your video, and maybe, because this is, I invite people to join with me in this chant and drumming. We're going to drum with our body. So yeah, so if you turn on your video and do it with me, then maybe I'll encourage people who are with us on Zoom to do this together. Thank you. And you can do it either sitting or standing. And since I'm going to sing, I'm going to turn on my Zoom sound for a musician. And I'm just testing, there's no echo, right? as you listen, the sound is good. Okay. So this chant came to me a few years ago, actually around the time of climate change, 4 years ago, climate change consciousness conference. So I put it in the chat. There's just 4 lines. Earth is calling, awakening in dawn. She takes her stride, rising. I'm sorry, someone has just posted something. I'm gonna repost mine down here. So yeah, if you can hold off the posting, and after we finish this ritual, I would appreciate that. So I'm gonna repeat. Earth is calling, awakening in dawn. She takes her stride, rising like a giant. So this is how we're gonna do it. First, we're gonna do the drumming. I'm gonna show you guys the drumming with our hand and our patting of our body. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So very simple. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can patting any place, and then we're gonna keep doing this. And I'm gonna start singing. 2, 3. Earth is calling, awakening in dawn. She takes her stride, rising like a giant. Earth is calling, awakening in dawn. She takes her stride, rising like a giant, rising like a giant, rising like a giant. Again. Earth is calling, awakening in dawn. She takes her stride, rising like a giant. Earth is calling, awakening in dawn. She takes her stride, rising like a giant, rising like a giant, rising like a giant. Please do it together with me at the last chant. Earth is calling, awakening in dawn. She takes her stride, rising like a giant. Earth is calling, awakening in dawn. She takes her stride, rising like a giant, rising like a giant, rising like a giant. May us all feel the power of Earth and rise on behalf of her. Thank you all.
Thank you, Spring. If you could put your sound back to the way it was before. Thank you. Thank you.
Rising like a giant. Those are my words for today. Thank you so much. Okay, let's carry that with us. I'd like to introduce Dr. Anne Marie Chomat. If you could come on the screen. There you are. Hello. It's an honor for me to have you here. You and I have known each other for quite a few years, and I am so honored that you are part of this. Honoring the call to bridge worlds and cultures is her mission. Anne Marie Chomat, MD, PhD, MPH, is a practitioner and thought leader in decolonizing holistic approaches to health and well-being. She holds a PhD in stress research focused on the integrational impact of stressors on women and their children in marginalized contexts. As a mentor, teacher, physician, and community engagement practitioner, she has over 20 years experience working alongside some of the most marginalized populations across 5 continents. She co-founded Buena Semilla together with an indigenous Maya woman of Guatemala, with whom she has been working for the last 12 years, a grassroots organization widely recognized for its innovation with the fields of women's empowerment, participatory community mental health, and collective healing as a vehicle for transformational change. She is most passionate about co-creating decolonized transformative spaces for unheard, voiceless people of this world, believing they hold the deep medicine for the healing, not only of self and the communities they belong to, but also for our planet. She is fluent in English, French, and Spanish, and is dedicated poetic artist and ceremonialist. I welcome you with all of my heart, Anne.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, for your introduction. I'm not sure if am I here yet?
You are very much here. Yes.
Okay, you can see me. Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
Great. So yeah, I am so honored to be here and to have been invited to weave my voice into this space. And I wanted to start just saying how inspired I am by all of you, and so grateful to Stephanie and Kathleen who brought us all together. I have long been inspired by you, Kathleen, and your ability to hold space for others and to hold community. And then yesterday, I just have so much inspiration left over from yesterday by both of you, and actually by all panelists, and how you're able to weave it all together across dimensions, with your feet in the reality of this world and the 3-dimensionality of it all, but then pulling these strands from the world of dream and of creativity and manifesting them in the world, and just infinite possibility firmly rooted in today's reality. I feel like you embody so beautifully and inspiringly. And I'm so deeply moved by yesterday, the words that you spoke, Jim, the words that you spoke, Stephanie and Kathleen, the songs of Asa, the words of Anita and Claire. And I was actually so activated at the end of the session that I had to go outside and stand barefoot on the earth for a long time and just let the rain pour down onto me, and then go running before I could even formulate a word again in my conscious mind. And this is really what I believe means, what it means to ignite one another, which is really what was spoken so beautifully yesterday, to light ourselves on fire. And as Claire spoke about, to quantum leap into a different manifestation of ourselves and what we put out into the world for the good of all of life. And I feel really called to share with you an image that has been showing up for me for several years now, that really nourishes my own creative focus. I keep seeing this tree that is stuck with its roots deep in the ground and its branches that reach into the sky. And it's stuck because the branches have a cannibalistic relationship with its roots, like a straw, just sucking up the nutrition, the marrow of life, the nurturance, just in a linear relationship. And this is, as I see it, the illusion that humanity is manifesting today and is maintaining today. Below are all the workers, the life bearers, the givers, the life protectors, the wisdom of the seed, the life creative force. They're hidden away and their life is crushed, sucked out of them. And above is the concentration of wealth, power, resources, information, knowledge that is just sucking the life out of the roots. But it's really an illusion because life is everywhere, as above as below, so below. And if we actually flip this tree around, is the image I keep having, is that we don't have above and below, top, and top and bottom, knowledge and no knowledge and voice and no voice. We're now side by side. And we can't actually see, and that's how it goes with the earth. We just keep turning. And we say how the relationship is actually circular, it's regenerative, it's infinite. The flow of giving and receiving between the branches and the roots, the sap that flows to side by side and changed with each time it goes back and forth. And we can also see that in the space in between, there lies a space of infinite possibility, where the sum is greater than its parts. And that's the space of creation where something new is being born, a sacred third that's born in the interrelation between these two parts. And I wanted to mention this because, well, as I mentioned, it's really helps me focus my own creativity, my own presence over the last few years. And I'm haunted by it because how can we really get to this vision of how things could be? How can we really get here where we're side by side? And what happens when we're not? How much disease blocks are a result of this imbalance and of this disequilibrium? But how can we get here? No, when it is so ingrained in the collective consciousness and with each one of us in each cell of our being, that there are those of us who know and those who don't, and that so many of us don't feel safe being me, and so I'll continue to hide away. And how can we thrive? How can we each do our part individually and collectively? And as a humanity, when more than half of us, and half within each one of us, because our creative force, are so much within ourselves, is also repressed, prevented from being our authentic selves, shining our light and engaging fully in co-creation. And so I wanted to take you a little bit on a journey of my own journey. I trained in medicine. I was partly guided by my soul essence, who wanted to be of service and wanted to be close to other people and within the space of healing. But I was also partly misguided by the expectations of others. And because I was partly misguided, I kept escaping. There was a voice within me that called me to go and listen to the silent voices, to go to all these places where there was voicelessness. And this voice was telling me that these are the voices that we need to be listening to. These are the places where we need to go and shining our lights on. So that's what I did, what I kept doing. I kept escaping to many lands to work and walk alongside many peoples, and each more marginalized than the other. And following this thread, of wishing to work with people who fall between the cracks, or who aren't able to access these spaces of voice, of full expression of self, of well-being. I followed that thread, and I specialized in internal medicine and then infectious diseases and public health. I kept trying to figure out how I could get there. This crack that lies at the interface of so many convergent systems of oppression. And then one day the voice whispered to me, it just got a bit fine-tuned a little bit, and told me it's actually the women that we need to be listening to, those who hold the seeds of the future in their hearts, who hold, in their hands, in their bellies, And I told those boys, how do I do that? That's not what I studied. That's not what I became. I studied other things. I heal infections, and but the voice told me to put everything in my life on hold and just to sit down with a woman. That's what I did. And at this point, everything in my life was pulling me to a part of the world I had never been to before, to Latin America, and more especially to Guatemala and the land of the Maya, that has been referred to as a land of tragic beauty because it's just so deeply beautiful and so deeply alive with indigenous population, but so deeply scarred also by colonization, by ongoing colonization, by globalization, by climate change, by violence, by a 30-year-long armed conflict that didn't end so long ago, whose very intention was to destroy the Maya population and fragment and seed mistrust at the very heart of people, of families, of communities, and really played an incredible role at creating fragmentation and dissolving communities. And so that's where I ended up. And I sat down. I didn't know what else to do, so I just sat down with almost 400 women over the course of several years, who are all bearing life or about to bear life or holding new life in their hands. And I listened to their stories alongside a few women who are accompanying me and, helping me understand and translating for me from the Maya languages. And words are difficult. It's people who don't have much of a voice, who don't speak their stories easily, who they don't have spaces for sharing, for voicing, for even practicing what is it that I have to say, or believing there's something to say. So we ended up working a lot with photography initially, where women could take photos, and then that was a way to speak beyond words or to find words. And where things started, I started to see how amongst these women, and also within myself, how hearing the story of others allows me to see myself. Just the very process of maybe lifting my head up a moment for the first time and kind of looking beyond my lived reality and my survival, my getting through the day, how I actually see myself when I hear your story. And I also saw how when we gather, something was being woven together again. Then remembered, not like remembered, reassociated out of the dismemberment that had happened. And I saw the healing power, also the narrative on self and other, how telling my story or telling someone else's story was actually healing, was actually therapy, was medicine for the other and for the whole. Even if it was too scary for a woman to speak of her story, speaking of another story, or hearing someone speak of a similar story, it just was this incredible power of healing within it. And at the ends of these few years, 2 or 3 years, I sat down with the woman that I was working with. There was 4 or 5 Maya Mam women that were at the core of just this, these women, community women that I was working with and who had accompanied me throughout the years. And we all looked at one another and wondered what we would do now. And it was clear that the women were ignited. Is that we saw what's going on in our community. It's not just me, it's everyone, and we want to help other women. And what came to these women, it just fell without any prior experience, or lived experience of any of us, was to gather the women and to bring women together in circle. And we had spent years really looking at the way things were together, of mapping things out, of putting on those lenses where we could look at things from a bigger perspective and understand with new eyes the 3D worlds before us. But now it was time to create something, to actually step into creation together. And really, as I spoke before, how to dream into being a new space, informed by the reality that that we all had an increased awareness of, and then pulling in the dream as well, where we could weave between the two and create something new that had never been, at least within the lifetime of these women. And it's not easy to access the dream world when you've been taught for generations not to dream, when no one else does it, when it is dangerous to dream. And so it was really small steps, imagining what this space could be, what could happen within these spaces, what could women's lives be like. It started really small. You know, I could paint my house blue. I could have a chicken coop. I could maybe learn how to cook a new dish, really small things. And within the first circles that we did of trying to see what we could dream into be, what these women wished to dream into being, it was so striking to me how listening to other women's dreams emboldened others to dream as well. And they voiced it. They say, my gosh, now that I heard everyone else's dreams, I have another dream, which is a little bit bigger. And it keeps on going and going. And then we started experimenting. The women started to experimenting to add new ingredients, what the space would be like, where they could actually come back into wholeness together and heal what they felt needed to be healed. And so some of the ingredients that came in were, you know, sacred agreements, things that allow this space to be a different space where I can enter and leave my old self at the door, and I can enter, and I have different rules here where I can actually speak, I can cry, I can laugh, I can move, I can move more freely, I can you know, just experiment with new ways of being. And where ancestral wisdom also started to be voiced, things that are still so repressed and so taboo, but they started coming in, you know, the Maya spirituality rituals started to come in as ingredients that were really important to these women. And embodied practices as well. Some of the most powerful elements of these circles that have been woven in little by little have been play, movement, arts. So just drawing, painting, which for some women, it was the first time they were ever picking up a pencil because they didn't know how to write and they'd never been to school and they had never dared to pick up a pencil. And it's hard to imagine what that opens up in the life of a woman, picking up a pencil for the first time and being invited to say something, to get something out, to just start experimenting. It's like unblocking a very huge blockage and allowing things to flow again. And the body also, you know, how to move, you know, out of this very stiff body that's so constricted and so contracted and so blocked, to actually move and to actually dance and move freely, unblocking things. These aren't things that have come easily, but it's things that the women have felt little by little, like experimenting with and bringing with and realizing, my gosh, when I do this, when I move, when I actually move my neck, I'm able to speak more freely and I have other ideas, and and just there's a completely different energy in the collective. And there's life force, this creative life force that becomes increasingly present. The space, little by little, I just was witnessing how it became a space where women could do things they couldn't do at home, where they could actually experimenting being someone else, where they could release what was blocking them, or where they could come home to themselves little by little and remember themselves into being. And I really wanted to make this point just in the setting of creativity rising, you know, in this container of this space that you're holding, Stephanie and Kathleen, how important these spaces are, where you can actually start igniting the creativity that is so repressed elsewhere. And I also witnessed how this space was more healing than any other that I had ever been able to be a part of or offer, as a physician, and just how very simple it was and how very profound it was, just creating a space where the life force can flow again. How it can start its path, how the life force within each person can start its path towards liberation, and how women can start reaccessing their potential and their life force and their creativity, and start realizing that they're actually agents. And I also I just witnessed how it was healing, not just at the level of being blocked and then unblocked, or not being able to speak and then being able to speak, of not believing in myself to believing in myself and becoming a leader, but also how it is healing mental health, and how it is healing also physical illness. And I continue to be blown away to this day at how powerful the simplicity, and how simple this is actually. And here, as I was co-creating with these women, and keenly aware that I was co-creating spaces where others could find their voices, and that this was part of my, my own vocational arousal. Where I really love that I really love that concept, that image. But anyway, so keenly aware that I was here co-creating spaces where others could find their voice, and it hit me. How can I do this when I myself don't have a voice? And it hit me, this whole path that I've had of, going from, becoming a physician, and how come that's linked to me wanting a voice, and just starting to really bring all of this down into my awareness, realizing how stuck I myself was, wishing to be a voice for the voiceless, or to create spaces where they could find their voice, but without myself even having my own voice, or having that be such a big struggle still for myself. And that's when I really got it. Coming back to the image of a tree, what it means to flip ourselves side by side in a reciprocal flow of giving and receiving. That co-creation isn't just about co-creating something together, like a space, a circle, a product, a healing space. It really landed in me that co-creation means being in co-creation, means being part of it, being willing to be transformed, not just standing outside of it. It means taking the white coat off, the white coat of perfection, of untouchability, of immutability, of knowledge, of power, that I have the healing within me, just throwing that all out the window, and actually standing here as a human being with you, and receiving you, dancing with you, co-creating with you, and being irreversibly changed alongside you, so that I myself it becomes this dance of co-creation, where in this interrelation between you and me, I see the shadows, the blockages. I'm triggered, or I am inspired to get unstuck. The spaces in between, how it becomes this space of co-creation, when we both, on all sides, can start engaging in this process of dying, just letting everything that is blocking the flow be letting it die away, and leaving space for something new to be born. Because it's when we get stuck, when we repress, we block, we hold back, that we so often enter into illness, into disease, whether it's individual or is it social and community-wide. And we really do this together. We ignite and illuminate the brilliance, the creator within. We enter conscious interrelation, creating systems of life. and breaking free from this invisible contract that used to define our interrelationship, where what was uniting me to you is based on systems of power over if I have the knowledge or I don't have the knowledge, that was actually robbing all of us from receiving the gift of the other and being able to grow, and actually let the life force flow freely. I'm reminded here of the incredible work that Kathleen does. I just wanted to mention it, just holding community and bringing people together and actually being a doula to others' creativity, because it's not always easy or possible to birth something new into being, and to do it alone. It's an essential role in our society to hold one another as we co-create and as we allow the old, all that stands in the way of creating, to fall away as we create space for the new. And I'm also reminded of Stephanie's words yesterday, and how you spoke into this, just bringing it all in, the dance and the poetry, and how powerful it is when we're able to dance to dance with it all. And perhaps it's not so crazy to engage in these spaces where we can dance together and sing and even get it all out, whether it's about screaming or just finding ways to release what needs to be released, so that there's space for something new, where there's space for wholeness, where there's wholeness within the self and wholeness within the collective as well. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you. Just how healing is not something, as I've just come to live so powerfully in these experiences over the last 15 years. It's not something that we hand over to the hands of someone else. Healing is so much more about remembering that I already hold the force of life within me, and to not take that away from anyone. Rather, to be able to engage with a dance with you where you remember, and you help me remember who I am, and that we hold that space of remembrance one to the other, that we all hold the medicine together. And that healing really is the space of interrelation, the space in between. Coming back to this image of the tree, whether it be the space between the soul and the fertile body that Claire spoke into yesterday, or the space between you and me. It's a space of creation, of co-creation and infinite possibility, the space that lies in between, from where we might shine our essence selves into the world, and igniting and illuminating all those who come to stand with us, and inviting everyone to weave a new world into being from a place of wholeness, or of coming back into wholeness. So thank you so much for listening, and I think I'm complete with that.
Oh, goodness. Thank you. Beyond words, thank you doesn't really do enough. There's so many things that you have reminded us of, and it feels like a very cathartic moment within this entire event, from the way that you are so very humbly, just like you say, throwing off the white coat and being here at the basis of our innate healing. And it does, bring tears to my eyes, and also creating the space where life force can bloom, that, that to flow again, so it won't be stopped in any way, internally, personally, or globally. I just thank you so much.
Yeah, I too want to honor you, Dr. Shomat, for your humility, but also for presenting what I would call a regenerative health model that perfectly exemplifies creativity and co-creative solutions to this overwhelming crisis that we have been facing, that is parallel to every other crisis in the world right now, which is the health crisis. the magnitude of health crises that we are beset with is only going to accelerate. And you are a partner to me. You are a sister with me. We are co-creative, even though we are meeting right now for the very first time. We are doing the same thing in realizing the bottom-up solution through creativity to what I would say is the central crisis, which is the crisis in health. And that's why I created the Regenerative Health Program. And it is my humble attempt, my persevering attempt to manifest this bottom-up solution that comes from remembering, that comes from recognizing the wisdom and the resilience within all of us. And for me, that comes out of my understanding of embryology. It comes out of my understanding of neurodevelopment. It's rooted in science. It's buttressed by science, but it was present in me from the moment I was conceived. And being able to share that recognition with others is the work of the great physician. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. What an honor to be in this space with you. And this is, I think, a good segue to Dr. Spring Chung. And she is, as I mentioned before, on the faculty of the Regenerative Health for a Climate Changing World PhD, master's degree program that we'll be launching on Ubiquity University, in which the art that Dr. Shoma has so beautifully and poetically transmitted to us is delivered so that people can embody it, so that this can become on a scale that was unimaginable to me, but is now manifesting, and it's manifesting through co-creativity with people like the exquisite Dr. Spring Chung. So please take your space, Spring.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And just do a time check. How much we're looking at for the next section.
Yeah, I think that you can use to the top of the hour. Yeah.
To the top of the hour? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Thanks. Dr. Shoma, your story actually is so in parallel with mine. We're here talking about the systemic change. And I think for me, in the past, when I was growing up, when people talk about the system, usually we think about the institutions, the offices, the government post, which hold this organization, charging and coordination of how the system runs. But nowadays, more and more, I realize there is a system that is running us without our conscious directing. So by that, I mean just more and more, almost like on a weekly basis, sometimes daily basis, I would meet a colleague or someone who who I feel like we're actually working side by side, or we're like rowing a raft on a rushing river all together, except we just met at this moment. But I just feel so empowered by all of us. A lot of us are creating this, or like what my song is the song that I received, where we're standing up, we're rising up on behalf of Mother Earth, the consciousness of Mother Earth. We are tuning in to the space of unknown and receiving guidance, and we giving our life, giving our body to it. And then we'll meet colleagues, we'll meet co-workers, we'll meet our team by chance, by just this, there will be this nodal moment where we all meet. And this is the system that I am fully committed, working 100% to, even though I'm most of the time here in my office, and I hardly, ever being in the same space with Dr. I've met her twice, but we've might as well being like a close colleague for decades. So the image of tree, for example, in my line of work, I'm a wisdom carrier of the indigenous knowledge of ancient Chinese, the ancient Taoism book of change, that I through my vessel, through my transmission, I'm reinventing new language to speak about this wisdom that actually honors feminine power and rebalance it with masculine power. So in our line of work, we actually do a ritual, which is a Qigong movement that actually embodies the tree by using our hand and movement gesture to feel the energy that rising from earth, to reach out through the invisible energy meridians that's around our space to receive the nourishment and the light from the infinite high and channel that energy through our body. So we actually do, this is a ritual that we do hundreds, thousands of times with the cohort, the community I built with the Chinese folks that living in China right now. So it's really a great synchronicity to meet this metaphor and just remembering that everything we see in the nature, the trees, the river, the mountain, the sun, the moon, they're actually corresponding to some elements in ourselves. So I think, so I actually have a similar background. I grew up in China at a time where there was this almost avid frenzy attempt to learn all the scientific technological technological knowledge, absorb it from the West, and at expense. I mean, this knowledge are great knowledge, but at the time I was born, that was done at the expense of discarding the ancient Chinese, the root wisdom that were part of our heritage. And I've carried that starting from very young. I felt that something was tremendously wrong, even though at that time I couldn't speak what that was. However, I carried that feeling, that knowing in my body. As a matter of fact, I was very, very sick all along as a child, not knowing why. And it was only until in my adult years I realized that was because my felt sense of this disconnection from our root, disconnection from our heritage. So, and also fulfilling fulfilling the societal expectation, I actually went on, pursued the academic degree to the highest post. I got my PhD. I got a doctoral degree in molecular biology in United States, and it was through my profession I got even more tuned into how actually if we don't that the medicine is actually in the conventional medicine, so much of the attention is attuned towards the outward agency, a pill or a doctor or a solution that could cure our disease. However, it was through my own awakening inside and reconnecting with my ancestral heritage, I deeply realized that the medicine is within. It was the healing power inside us. When we the healing, the medicine. So later in the year, I actually went back to study the Chinese medicine and reconnected with my ancestral medicine. And it was in that modality I realized that the job of the medicine is not to act upon disease, or at least not entirely about acting upon the disease. Is actually the primary goal is to hold the space so that the natural healing power of our body can have a chance to do its own work. It's actually a much more of a supportive role, a space of allowing that is the most healing. So it was then I decided that when I realized that, when I felt that, it was then I decided that I'm going to put everything I got to help build a system that honors this kind of medicine that honors our own life force. And oh, interestingly, I'm just glancing on the chat and I saw a comment that said, a lovely deep into yesterday's expensive, rich young. And thank you. So in this new commitment to reestablish this medicine that honors life, in my attuning to the greater spirit, I have got assigned this almost feeling impossible task, which is I heard from the spirit and the guidance that it wants me to bring back this old wisdom from the ancient Chinese Taoism cosmology, the Book of Change, into a modern language, and eventually bring it back to China when this ancient language hasn't been spoken for thousands of years. So this is where I would like to bring back to. So when I was presented with such an impossible task, and I think for every one of us here, all the panelists and everyone who are listening here, at this moment of our history and the moment of our life, we're all probably facing something that feels to our mind that insurmountably challenging and impossible. And I want to say that I was given the blessing, I was given the fortune to meet teachers and the guides who lead me to another kind of language to speak with my soul, to speak with my innate creativity. And that's the language of music, movement, theater, and art. And when we speak the word art, again, I want to make a differentiation of this is not art in the commercial sense, that presenting something that will pass the critics standard and earn some kind of reward merit. But this is kind of art that we that first and foremost for ourselves, artistic expression, so that we can connect that with that wellspring of life force in ourselves. So and it was my journey that to whenever I run into an impasse in my creative journey, I didn't know how to to open up new course in this domain of unknown. It's almost like trudging in the darkness. You don't know what's going to happen next day or next week. You have to make a new en route into places where no one has gone to. And I just remember so many times it was when I sit down in my piano or start going to myself and dance with the movement and the energy forces that moves me, that a new possibility that I couldn't see before became visible. And I mean, this long story short, it was through this day by day, week by week, that I'm guided by this language of art, of expression, that actually almost feeling impossible road was paved for my work, my little creation, to find its way back to China, to connect with people who are hungry and can't wait to reunite with the part of our heritage within ourselves through this little creation that I've stewarded through my life force. So I just glanced at the clock and realized that it's been several minutes past the top of hour, and I want to close, draw my little sharing to a closure. That I think in Taoism, in my tradition of Taoism, every being, every existence has the two sides, and for me, the creative and the destructive, they are actually the same. They are the same side of life, the life process. So the same being, the existence, the same thing that can destroy us, the very same thing on the other side is what can enable us to create. So as we are here today in this moment, sitting this grave, facing a lot of grave potentials that's going to happen that has catastrophic effect on the world, I invite and celebrate all of us who were able to go back to that place within, to connect with that root, that tree root that connect us with the greater life, and pivot our consciousness and hold that destructive force with care and compassion, and knowing that on the other side is the creative force that we can channel and use to enable the birth of something new. Yeah, thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Spring. And I hope everyone is breathing in the voice of the feminine as the approach to systemic change, and inhaling how the feminine consciousness leads us, the personalization of Dr. Shomat and Dr. Chung, the way in which they humbly and honestly experience the evolution of their consciousness in a co-creative experience that results in systemic change. I want to just highlight the magnitude of the delivery of Dr. Chung's brilliance in China. Spring works intently with Chinese students. I don't know if I have to say anything more, that she is resuscitating the organic intelligence. I'm just chills all over. I can barely speak. Recognizing, Spring, the courageous work that you do in your delicate way from your little space there in Bellingham, Washington. I'm so honored that Spring is actually heading up the path of the expressive arts as the route to healing in the regenerative health program. You are blessed to experience Spring Chung, whether you're getting an MA, a PhD, or not. I encourage you to imbibe the refreshing waters of this spring.
Oh yeah. I'm just reverberating is what I am. My whole body is alive and vibrating. Even though both of you spoke so gently, there is this powerful energy that I'm feeling through both of you actually were listening inside and listening to what was calling you forward. And that is what creativity is. It's that soul voice that speaks to us, and to trust it is difficult. And once we do, it opens up the whole entire surface of creativity as it truly is. The work that you're doing in China, I mean, to bring back the heritage that has been silenced for such a large group of people, such a large country, and there is so much wisdom in those books. I've tapped in here and there, like many of us have. We've heard different pieces, and I think they've carried through like most of the teachings that I've ever experienced, really. There is always, Qigong is one of my, there's like such an untapped doorway through Qigong that, it's hard to even imagine the greatness of what you're bringing through that work, and the wellspring of life force that you've been listening to and guiding people into. And I really appreciate you being here and sharing with us your work. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce another deep feminine voice that is aiming continuously in the direction of co-creative systemic change, Stella Osorojos Eisenstein. She and I share the teachings of the extraordinary meridians, the rivers of splendor, which are their own wellspring of resilience. But what Stella does that I think is really unique to her through her resonant attention is she introduces the beauty of allowing, the spaciousness of allowing, combined with the evolution of consciousness. So I'd like to introduce Stella Osorojos Eisenstein. Please fill up the space with your beauty.
Thank you. Can you see me? Yes, Eric. No. Okay. Yes, I'm really moved by everything I heard yesterday and everything that I heard today. And I want to point out that all these beautiful faces and personalities and transmissions are a medicine. They give us permission to be ourselves, because these are examples of women thoroughly embodying themselves. And it's such a beautiful thing. How do they embody themselves so fully? By having, I presume, released trauma in their bodies. And that to me seems to be the key to invoking systemic change, which I'm not actually convinced that we need to invoke it. It feels like it's upon us. And our best guess is that we can kind of grab onto the tail of the dragon, if we're lucky. Systemic change is happening, and we are in the birthing process. And in order to take that ride, we really need to, divest ourselves of anything that's holding us back from that transformation. I love Dr. Chomat's example of women gathering and hearing each other's stories as a way to deeply heal trauma in their communities and in themselves, in their families. I actually had a transmission of that very same thing when I lived in Asheville. And I want to tell you the story because I think as a model, what Dr. Chomat gave to us is incredibly important. And I can probably condense it and make it a little bit more understandable how you might be able to put that into your own communities. by giving the story. So I was sitting around my living room with a group of girlfriends. I was very blessed when I lived in Asheville to have an amazing group of women that we would just gather and laugh, basically. And into that experience, there came a knock on the door, and it was one of my stepson's friends. I don't even know how she knew where we lived, but she was in distress, and it was like a rainy night and knocking on the door, and we all just, what the heck? But we let her in, and she came and sat in the middle and just bawled her eyes out to us. She was having relationship problems. She was kind of tenuously housed, and she she was pretty sure she had a STD. And we all just very instinctively went to work on her. You know, one of us who is a dancer got down and asked her to just be in her body and got her to move a little bit. And then another one of us who is just this incredibly beautiful mother and artist, you know, just soothed her with a song from Ireland. And I, being the sort of quasi doctor, had a, you know, Chinese medicine cabinet full of remedies to check her out for. And who else was there? Anyway, you can see the model that, you know, bearing witness to each other, meeting each other with resonant attention, what is healing in and of itself. And actually, Dr. Chen's work explicates the mechanics of this. You know, her resonance code. I thought she might pick up on the metaphor of the tree, because I know in her book there's a beautiful diagram of a tree in there that shows, that suggests not a two-part model as Dr. Chomont did, but a three-part model: upper world, middle world, and lower world. And Spring is pointing out that we really need to mine and discover the messages from the lower world, which I think in Taoist thinking may have profound implications, but there's also a very physical sense of that, the information that comes up from the body. We are increasingly becoming aware in the worlds of trauma and medicine that trauma is stored in the cell walls in the body, and that memory is stored in the body, not in the brain. And this speaks to what we have experienced. We know that when we dance together, we know that when we share stories, something releases and we become more whole. We know that we colonize our lower world, our body, better when we have released whatever traumas keep us away from parts of our body. Another story is coming up here. So many threads that are so resonant with me across the whole thing, but I recently did a bit of trauma healing on myself. Two pieces. One was around a slave past, and one was around a past in which I was a Maya. And I gave myself in full joy and ecstasy up to be sacrificed. And I, subsequent to that, presumably, or anyway, in this whole life, what I know is that my identification with love has been tinged with pain. I give my heart to people, and there's a bit of victim that's encoded in that. And it wasn't until I released this physical trauma in my body that hanger on of an authentic feeling of love disappeared. And now I'm having quite an unusual experience of filling my heart without any pain. It was so much a part of my experience that I didn't even know it was there. Likewise, I recently released another trauma around a slave past. My mother is from the South, and from the Revolutionary War, and we're going back to that time. And so there's slaves intertwined in our history there. And my sense of my own experience is that I was, a Black person and a white person. I was actually probably a Black person more than a white person. And I remembered through a process that I'll share with you in a moment, an experience of being on a slave ship, being trapped inside a slave ship, and what that encoded so deeply in my body, that in the body of the collective, that I couldn't see it at all. I simply would have identified, up until a few weeks ago, I simply identified myself as a sensitive person with a certain amount of anxiety. That was just a baseline experience of the world. And when I went into, so I had a trigger come up, and I went in to try to feel, a la focusing, right? Eugene Gendlin's work, but went in to try to feel where that was coming from in my physical body, and got quiet and got out of the way and allowed. Suddenly, this little thread of memory started to come up of my feet being on wood planks and pitching about, and this feeling of nausea. And what is this? And suddenly I realized, oh my God, I'm on a slave ship, and there's other people trapped in here with me, and it was unbearable. It was an unbearable sensation. And just by witnessing it, just by bringing it into consciousness, by integrating the lower body into my experience of the middle world and the upper world, or by witnessing, the trauma in the tissues, so that they could reconnect through the central nerve, back again through the central nervous system, right? Because when trauma is stored in the body, part and parcel of that process is that it is cut off from consciousness. We save ourselves the full experience by simply refusing to process it through the brain, through the central nervous system. And so we store it in the body until we have time and space to fully integrate that. I believe that in my case, it was lifetimes later before I had the capacity to do that. And I also believe that it's coming up now for me, because now is the time. The collective creativity is rising to the extent that these threads, we can now hold each other in these threads. We can now hold each other to start to metabolize these deep cultural traumas that have created our reality. Because when we have a trauma and we limit what our experience is, we say, okay, I can't go past that line because it's too much for me to deal with right now. We create a culture that is inherently limited, that refuses to take in information coming up from the body because it's not safe enough. But here we are, and I know that we're on the path. I know that there's hope, because these threads are coming up for me. They are becoming accessible in my field to be healed. That can only happen when the water rises for all of us to that extent. So back to this womb, or the experience of this woman who came into our room and received essentially a collective healing just by being held by a bunch of women. I had this download from that time. I got completely crazy about this idea, and I called it WOMB, Women United as Medicine. And the idea was super simple. It was just get a bunch of wisdom keepers together, the old ladies in your community that are sitting there waiting to be approached and to listen, and it doesn't have to be just women, obviously, but anybody that has the capacity to listen and be present. That's all that's required for this massive systems change that is emerging. So I had this idea that, yeah, we're going to do chapters in like every city, Women United as Medicine, womb groups. And, you know, it's just like, go to your church and like have office hours and let the people come and tell you their problems and hear each other and integrate the pain and the trauma that you've all experienced in order to get to that point. And step up in this quotidian way, this ultimately human way that we have of caring for each other, that's not just fluff. You know, it's profoundly healing. High blood pressure will go away, right? Blood vessels will open up. You know, that pain in your heart that you've had for your entire life can disappear. Like, so much is possible. This is ultimately what I have boiled down into the offering that I now give, which I just call resonant attention, where I'm simply pointing out that from an understanding of our interconnectedness, from a deep sense of all inhabiting the same field, that we are all co-creating. Attention is all we have to give to each other. And when we combine attention with allowing, which is also love. Claire Dubois yesterday said it's all about love. It's all about love. And I think that's ultimately true, because love is allowing, right? We are a little bit confused sometimes about what love is. Sometimes we think love means you owe me, you're required to do X, Y, or Z. Love is conditional, right? And I'm actually talking about love or allowing as a sitting behind yourself, as a absolute trust that the universe has your back, that Mama Gaia is giving you everything that you need. When you can hold that attitude, that energetic attitude in your body, then when you combine that with attention, miracles are possible. I noticed that was what was happening, attention and allowing, as I worked on people's bodies. I trained as an acupuncturist, and then I learned a bunch of bodywork modalities, and I found some amazing ones, orthobionomy and integrative manual therapy in particular. And those modalities are working in a very advanced way with energetics. But one of the pieces that they weren't really transmitting that well was this piece about allow. I did have one orthobionomy teacher who said, as I was working on somebody, she said, okay, now sit behind yourself. And it was an absolute aha moment. Get out of the way is another way to say it. I had the privilege of asking Orland Bishop once why that works. Why when you sit behind yourself, does healing seem to manifest at your fingertips with an alacrity that will blow your mind away, and certainly blows the previous paradigm out of the water? Why that's effective? And he said, it's because when you sit behind yourself, he's a Steinerian, but he's also from a West African tradition. He said, when you sit behind yourself, you're sitting in the place of the ancestors. You're allowing their wisdom to come through you. I love to think about it that way. And I have a little bit of a geeky side that also likes to think about it as there's something about pulling your energetic body, which in Chinese medicine we might call the hun, for those of you who know what that is, but it's the part of you that sleepwalks. So you might have a felt sense around it from that. But when you sit behind yourself, potentially, and I don't think we know this, and I certainly don't pretend to know this, but what it feels like is that sitting behind yourself invokes a 0-point field or possibly tachyonic energy. It's the energy of yes and no together. So all possibility. So you're invoking all possibility. So it's not, oh, I only want this type of healing. I only am going to allow if I get better. It's actually allowing all possibility, including death. And when we can do that, then miracles can arise because we have opened the field to the possibility of whatever might be in service to the soul. So resonant attention, as I teach it, and which I think really can, should revolutionize our understanding of healthcare. Resonant attention can be seen in the Western medical paradigm. It can be seen in placebo. It can be seen in, the example of the women in Guatemala, or what happens when we dance with each other, where it's attention, we're giving something attention. We're actually, in many cases, right, like with placebo, we just simply don't get in our way because we have we haven't latched on to any mechanism for how it works yet. And so, allowing is actually a little bit easier. Western medicine, same thing. A doctor comes in when it works, right? Doctor comes in, applies attention that feels soothing to that person for whatever reason, and that person feels met and seen, the appropriate resonance is generated, and that's all that, that's it. That's all that's needed. The body can take over. We're supporting the body, as Spring said. We're supporting the body by getting out of the way and allowing. And that's all that we need. It's not so great for, an extractive model. It's not that easy to make money when you switch your healthcare model around to, hey, let's get a bunch of women together and have them hold counsel for each other. So there are some sacred cows we have to give up in order to get there, right? The idea of the doctor having a $2 million house on the beach, not so much, probably. But what we gain collectively is obviously beyond measure. And I do think it's the only way forward. So I invite you all to take that model of the womb, or however it works for you, where you're just holding loving space for each other and healing your bodies and healing your traumas and liberating your bodies, right? And coming into fuller expressions of yourself, so that when you show up, wherever you show up, just yourself, it will encode, it will seed the field with a healed image that everybody can then draw on, right? This co-creative caring for each other by tending to our own traumas. It's a bit of a paradox. It's not, as happened during the pandemic, where we smear each other with our victim senses. And maybe this didn't happen across the board, but we take care of ourselves as we take care of ourselves, we take care of each other, because we are then holding wholeness into the field, and not without a shred of victimhood. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say. I think that's it. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for convening this and for having me on, and for all the beautiful work that everybody's done. I really appreciate you all.
Thank you, Stella. This is all so exciting. I had to go and get some peanut butter to ground myself. I was feeling so completely electrified by the power of the feminine in describing systemic change with a personalized center. The beauty of that is electrifying to me and only increases the ardor of my vocational passion. Stella heads up the empowerment healthcare aspect, how we approach healthcare from an empowered place in the regenerative health program. And you can see how perfectly she embodies that approach. So we are coming to the time when we cannot sum up the magnitude of what we have delivered here from the feminine perspective of systemic change, but we're going to have a go at it. Kathleen, can you launch us?
Yeah, I would love to first just speak to Stella. I mean, how can I not? I feel that I've actually had one of those very extemporaneous healings in this moment, really, just listening to you. And, you know, I trained as an energy healing practitioner and worked in holistic healing. And I think that the trauma that we're carrying in our body is also the trauma that we're noticing in the world. And if we're blocking, you know, how you were explaining, it just occurred to me when you were speaking, that if we're blocking it in our body to keep ourselves safe, you know, we're holding it in our bodies and not really being conscious of, you know, the different traumas that I know we've all been through, that we're also doing that the same for the world. And so I think that's that, you know, that heartbreak that unites us, that actually brings us together, is the piece that we need to step into. It's like, you know, okay, you know, maybe we can't do, you know, people may feel helpless in the face of so many things that are, you know, catastrophic. And I believe Spring was also saying that, you know, crisis is equal to the creativity, but it's also the heart that connects us in that place, and the love and everything that you were talking about. So there's a level in me, you know, I experienced great abuse in my life. And there's a part in me that just became healed in this moment, just coming together as we are and resonating with that truth. You know, there's a part of my shoulder that said, hell yeah, you know, like, it's okay, it's safe. It's safe. We are here with people who understand. So thank you, Dr. Stella, and all of you again, so much. Thrilled to meet you, to know you, and to be with you here. Thank you.
And I'd like to bring Jim in, the masculine voice, into this deep feminine space. I know it's been healing for you, Jim.
It has indeed. And just to follow on with Kathleen, just to say, Stella, I thought what you just said was very deep. And like Kathleen, I think as a result of both Spring and Anne-Marie, just opening oneself up to this kind of energy in and of itself is healing. Because you just feel more whole about reality. I don't know whether Anne-Marie's still there in Spring, but I'd love to have you turn on your videos so that we could see you all one more time. And just to say, first to you, Anne-Marie, I was so struck by your heartfulness in the way that you've reached out to those extraordinarily vulnerable women in Guatemala after decades of civil war and centuries of colonialism, till they don't even know where they are in relationship to their own grounding. And for you to be able to be so instrumental. I just found your presentation profoundly moving. So I just want to acknowledge that and thank you. And Spring, similarly, you know, to be a Chinese living in the United States, but, you know, ministering back into China, you know, as China now begins to take its place as a world leader at a time when the primacy of the United States is being eroded and evaporating right before our eyes. China is in many ways leading the world as we think and orient ourselves to the future. And so for China to reach back into its civilizational roots could not be more important to the world, not just for the medical arts, but for the kind of wholeness that all of us around the world want to see recognized by the powerful and the elites at a moment when China is moving so vigorously toward that end. So I just want to acknowledge the importance of what you're doing. And then Stella, again, you know, just this resonance of intention and elevated emotions in galvanizing the healing process. I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head, as they say. And I would love to hear more. And I'm sure, and this is what I wanted to turn to, I'm sure all of these aspects are part of the regenerative health program, Stephanie, that you're developing for Ubiquity University in partnership with your climate change and consciousness and the TARA approach. So why don't you just summarize, you know, what you have in store for this emerging doctoral program, because we're very excited to have this as part of our offering to people around the world so they can go through this training and get master's degrees and PhD degrees at the same time.
Yeah, I'm pretty thrilled at how today has evolved as really a living demonstration of the curriculum I've been developing. And now is not the time, but at some point, I can tell you that this entire curriculum was born out of the dream of a little child who was being abused in her family. That there was a dream that I had as a little girl of a circle of healers that would come and tend to this troubled family. And I recognized that as I became a neuroscientist and I became an embryologist and a neuropsychologist and all of those titles, I remembered this dream. And that's really where the MA PhD program in regenerative health was born. And I feel, Anne-Marie, you're part of that program. Kathleen, you're part of that program. And I will bring you on board. At the moment, my incredibly lovely sisters, Stella and Spring, were the three S's. The sound of a spring, really, the sound of the rivers of splendor in our names. We are the faculty, and what an honor that this program has turned out really to demonstrate the component parts, the fusion of different traditions steeped in the literature, which you will investigate in this program, the literature of regenerative healing, the literature of healing in community, which goes into many traditions and is documented and researched, the empowerment basis of regenerative health, this remembering, bringing back into the members of our bodies the truth of innate resilience, which is demonstrated in our embryological unfolding. Each one of us is a living embodiment of resilience. And I understand that from an embryological standpoint, and having listened to and witnessed thousands and thousands of people who remembered their courageous odyssey of coming into form, Yetzirah, form, at a time, as we named yesterday, a time of magnificent transformation, excruciating loss, and magnificent manifestation of human potential. The regenerative health program empowers those who have healing in their hearts to bring this synthesis into families, into communities, and be embodiments of the potential of life. L'chaim. And are there questions or comments from the chat that you would like to share with us, Jim, before we close?
Well, I think today there were less questions than just wild enthusiasm.
Vocational fervor, vocational.
So take it in, ladies, just take it in, the wild enthusiasm of our community for who you are and what you're bringing into the world. It was a wonderful thread on the chats, just to feel the affirmation that was going your way. It's quite extraordinary.
Thank you, Jim. And for those who would like to meet directly with the panelists, those who have time available, we will be happy to go into the after chat room, which is a separate link that Stanley has been posting and which is available to us. And we will be there to discuss the content of this program further for those who are interested in doing so.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Kathleen, Stella, Anna Marie, and Spring. I can hardly wait for the 4 of you and others to come together, in 5 of you and others to come together for our master's and doctoral program, because we consider this one of the most cutting edge programs we've ever offered in the history of the university. And it really doesn't exist as Stephanie's envisioned it, I don't think hardly anywhere else. So this is a very unique and frontier offering that we're putting together to empower people to regenerate and rejuvenate their own health through natural processes and ancient wisdom. So that'll do it.
Can I just mention tomorrow?
I was just going to ask you to do that.
We're going to have even more of this vocational ecstasy tomorrow. Creativity as personal and planetary healer with Mary Reynolds Thompson, Teresa Mathoni, and our beloved Claire Hadeen.
Good. Thank you, everyone. That'll bring us to a close for today. You're all welcome to the after session chat. You'll see the link that Stan has just put up in the chat box. And we'll see you all tomorrow for our 3rd of 5 sessions on creativity rising. Thanks so much. Bye for now.
Thank you all.